This video is sponsored by Squarespace, helping you bring your business to life through amazing, intuitive websites you can build yourself. One of my favorite things to do in the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was just to watch the title screen play and listen to the music. I know that sounds silly, but there was something about Link galloping through the twilight of the approaching dawn that was mesmerizing as a child. More so after you had completed the game. It was like one of those odd moments where you knew pressing start offered no new experiences, but you still turned on the game anyways. Leaving this on loop is an odd memory that I have as a child, but upon booting up the game, I'd of course seek out the edges of the world. Link didn't have to be anywhere, and I knew I was in the end of game limbo where Ganondorf was waiting for me, but time stood still. The internal game timeline stood still, and you just lingered in this state forever. But enough reminiscing. The thing is, even though this game was done, I still set my sights on lots of absurd challenges and rumors. For those who have watched any of my videos from my 6th Nintendo 64 Mysteries series, you know this to be true. And in this video, we're going to be focusing on something pretty darn silly, but still notable from my childhood years. Can you touch the moon in Ocarina of Time? Now that statement might seem completely reversed in regards to what one would expect to hear in Majora's Mask. Obviously, the moon is one of the greatest threats in that game. And at the end of the game, we eventually make our way to it before the final fight. But back when the moon was merely something that coasted on by in the sky, it was something I would find myself looking at. Nighttime in Ocarina of Time was certainly my favorite time of the day, mainly because it felt extremely free and liberating for a child who had an earlier bedtime. Perhaps that's why I ended up taking greater interest in the moon over the sun. But I digress. The reason why I wanted to go to the moon in the first place was because of the excitement generated around the Sky Temple, a rumored temple that existed above Hyrule, where you would eventually collect the Triforce, which seemed like it was missing from your inventory. Part of that strategy, as I'm sure some of you may remember, involved sending gossip stones into the sky. Obviously, nothing ever came of this, and the Sky Temple ended up being a hoax. But my desire to travel upwards in the game never subsided. Even if you clipped out of bounds or came to an edge of the map, you knew the world extended far beyond where you were standing. You couldn't get there, and there wasn't anything to stand on. But you wanted to explore it anyways. Which takes us to the methods of trying to get up there. Nowadays, when you're watching speedruns, you probably see a bunch of extremely crazy skips and techniques. One such technique that can be used to gain height is called bomb hovering. This allows Link to stall in midair and continually move upwards slowly with each bomb that is used. The problem with this is that we'll never get high enough before we run out of bombs. Basically, we'll have Link above the horizon, but nowhere near as tall as he needs to be to reach the moon. Which is a problem, because traversing vertically at all for a scale this large is quite a feat. But it certainly isn't a dead end, because although the moon is sky-based, it rotates around the map. So even though the world is flat, or at least on this map it is, the moon can be adjacent to us and underneath us at different points during the day and night cycle. So if we clip out of bounds with Link, we can surely just time things right and touch the moon as we descend into darkness, right? Well, there's an issue with that too, because the death barrier is going to reset our position before we get down there. The death barrier is actually far above where the sun and moon are, so not even halfway through your journey, you'll respawn up above. So we can't go up because we can't gain enough height, and we can't go down because we'll be teleported back to the map before we get there. But what if we go horizontally? Technically, the sun and moon do a complete rotation, so that means at one point during their cycle, they are near the horizon. And this is where we can utilize the Swordless Link glitch. So back on the Nintendo 64 when I first did this, the method was a lot easier. Not that it is more difficult nowadays, but on the older versions of the game, you simply had to have Ganondorf swap the Master Sword out of your hand, which cleared your B button equipment. You then simply save and quit the game, and then reload your save. In newer versions, this is fixed though, so you have to actually utilize what is called the Ocarina Items glitch. This lets you play a different item as an ocarina, which is needed because the ocarina is banned from our fight with Ganon. As Zelda.speedruns.com puts it, when Link has a full bottle in his hand, you can delay the bottle dumping animation by jumping and pressing the button for the bottle in midair. If you then quickly put away the bottle before you hit the ground by switching to a new item, the game will not be able to play the bottle dumping animation, so it will default to the ocarina animation instead. By doing this, we can play an item, in this case our Megaton Hammer, as an ocarina, and we can warp out of here. This allows us to leave the fight in the newer versions of the game, and get Link swordless. Without a sword, Link is capable of doing a lot of strange things on Epona, like utilizing hookshot. If Link hookshots a wooden surface instead of moving to the location he shot, he'll actually be suspended in the air. At this point, you are free to move around horizontally, equal to the height of the head of the hookshot. And with this, we are free to break out of bounds and explore to our heart's content. This is where I left off this quest as a kid, exploring far out of bounds with my hookshot, but ultimately not reaching my goal for a multitude of reasons. There are two huge issues with reaching the moon this way. The biggest issue is that the camera doesn't want to leave the boundaries of the stage. Because of this, it's hard to tell how far out you are from the moon itself. If you manage to align yourself to the moon, which is a pain because it only passes by every 4 minutes, you then encounter another problem. No matter how far you go, the moon never seems like you can reach it. You're forever in front of it. So as a kid, that was the end of it. There is no point in trying to reach something that couldn't be reached. But the truth is, what I was seeing was a lie. Let me explain. The biggest issue with reaching the moon is it looks like it is a part of the skybox. The skybox is this big rotating cube around the world that is actually tied to the in-game camera, and not the player itself. This means that making Link move, regardless of distance, will always make it so the skybox never gets any closer. Because Link was always in front of the sun or moon when I did this, it would make sense that these assets are a part of this unreachable area. But it's a trick. The reality is, the moon is actually transparent, and the reason why Link always looked like he was in front of it was because you could see through it, even if he did pass through it. You would have never been able to figure this out on a console, unless you utilized some sort of debug menu camera adjustment code. But even then, it would have been a nightmare. The truth about the moon and sun is that they are absolutely enormous and extremely far out of bounds. Link looks like an ant in comparison to their size, especially when we pull the camera up beside them to compare. And due to how they were implemented, Link will always show up in front of them regardless if he's way past them. So after some careful planning and measuring my bearings on 4-minute intervals when the moon would pass, which is extremely tedious, mind you, I finally can say I've touched the moon in the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Sure, it's a silly concept, but part of my childhood feels complete by doing so. So, how about you? Did you have any strange goals from any video games in your childhood? Let me know in the comments below. Sponsorships help out a ton, so I want to thank Squarespace for supporting me with my deep dives into video games. Many years ago, prior to doing YouTube, I actually did freelance web design, and if I had something like Squarespace back then, my life would have been way easier. The slick templates they have allow you to design eye-catching, stunning websites to promote your business or side hustle in just the right way. They make it easy so you can create the online presence of your dreams without having to understand all the coding you'd normally need. So, ready to create your new website? Make it with Squarespace and get 10% off your first Squarespace order with offer code SwankyBox. You can find an offer link in the description below. And I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. And with that, thanks for tuning in for this voyage to the moon. Speaking about the sun and moon, perhaps you'd like to hear why the sun song is the deadliest song in Zelda, or why the properties of the Master Sword somehow make perfect sense. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers.